What is up? Welcome to this week's episode, that was loud, of the Vanflip podcast. Today, I'm joined by, not fellow, I guess fellow Floridian. Yeah, fellow Floridian Simon from the band Tracheotomy, down from a little south from where I'm at. I live in North Florida. Simon and the boys in Tracheotomy live in South Florida. Welcome to the show, Simon. How are you doing today, man?
Yo, great. Thanks for having me, my fellow Floridian.
Yeah. I've had a couple Floridian bands on here recently. Contention was on not that long ago, last month, and that episode just came out. So, you know,
Cool.
as a Floridian myself, I kind of know a little bit more about the local scene, what goes on down here. Like we talked about right before we started the podcast, you guys just played in my area with Enterprise Earth and some other. Was it Chelsea Grin and Enterprise Earth?
No, it was that tech death band in theory.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. 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 I get a lot. I get a
It was
million
going
tours.
on at the same time as Rockville.
That might be why we weren't
Wow.
there. Yeah, because we were at
Yeah,
Rockville doing a lot of stuff. How was the turnout for that, though? Just being that close to Rockville.
it was solid. I mean, the whole weekend was in Florida, and Rockville is like that 5-day stretch in May.
Yeah.
And we went like Jacksonville down to Orlando, then back up to the Emerald Coast. We played like Fort Walton Beach. And I would say like all the turnouts were good considering like that's one of the biggest like hard rock metal fests in the world.
Yeah.
And some of the people from that like came out to see us because Daytona's like pretty close to Orlando.
Yeah. It's not that far from
Oh,
Jacksonville, too. I mean, it's like an hour plus or something like that. It's not too far. You can definitely attend that and then bus it back home to either stay the night or to catch another show.
yeah, I mean Rockville's exciting. My dad was like, you gotta get on it one of the next few years.
Does your dad attend at all?
He's what?
Does your dad attend like Rockville at all?
Yeah, he's been and he like sends me videos of like bands that like I know and listen to, and I'm like, oh shit, he's like starting to get it.
Guy's in the pit now.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, Rockville. I mean, I've talked a lot about it, so I won't spend too much time on it. But Rockville is definitely one of the festivals that I have started to thoroughly enjoy going to, just because we cover a lot of those bands that are on the smaller stages, right? And some of those bands are kind of working their way up to like headlining, not the headlining stages, but like during the middle of the day or earlier in the day. So they're, excuse me, the DWP crew kind of seems to have their ear to the ground on like what's bubbling up or whatever. And so over the years, we've seen more metal and hardcore and adjacent type acts appear
for
on
sure.
those lineups. And with Rockville in Daytona now, it's like this past one, I guess, was over 200,000 people. Which, if you think about it, that's kind of insane, right? For the
So yeah,
weekend.
that's huge.
But
It's
they
huge.
do a really good job of like covering not covering but having bands on that are in our wheelhouse, but then also like you know I can see like Kiss or the Foo Fighters, or this year like Limp Bizkit, or somebody else that's kind of like one of those bands where you're like, I don't know if I would go to their show or their concert by
Yeah,
themselves, whereas I would go to like you know who played August Burns Red, for example, right? Like I'd probably go
yeah,
to a show if they came to town, but like I'm not going to go see Kiss. But I have the ability to do so at that kind of festival, and
yeah.
the
So
range.
like,
There's so much range in that festival, but
yeah,
yeah,
there's like bands with like a lot of motion who are like in the process of blowing up who get on these fests, and then they're also playing with like legendary bands.
yeah.
Like, yeah, that's what's cool about it.
Your producer played at Rockville.
Oh
Your
yeah,
new EP is coming out.
yeah,
Fixated Propensity for Destruction.
yeah.
And Chris from Body Snatcher, the drummer from Body Snatcher, also produced that record, and that'll come out this month. Now it's July 1st. On the 19th, that's coming out through 1126 Records.
Start.
How was that? How was and also I should probably clarify too. You guys have a new single out off of that. So Deliberate Dehumanization is off of that EP, and that's available for
Yeah,
streaming now.
second single off that EP. That's my favorite one. Like I was about to bring up Body Snatcher because like they're like the only band that comes to mind when I think of this previous Rockville that just played. Because like I follow Kyle and Chris, like we talk
Yeah,
and chop it up all the time, and I saw that they were playing like the middle of the day or like hot as shit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah, they definitely have been making some moves in the last, handful of years since we had them on the podcast a while ago. I think it was, during their first album cycle or right before the album, and
Yeah.
so it's been fun to watch those guys kind of grow over the years. And they're one of those bands, Floridian bands that do stop through here. So it's one of those things where like Florida's, and I've talked about it on here before, so apologies to those who are bored with this conversation, but touring Florida is very weird for bands not in Florida because like say they want to go down to where you guys are at Miami area and everything like that. That's a 6 hour drive from the near state, and there's nowhere else to really go. So
Yeah.
they have to like have like a 4 day tour of just Florida, and a lot of bands just kind of skip it all together.
Yeah. I mean, and I definitely think it's worth it, but I see why agents and bands just like avoid it in general. But like I feel like it's getting better.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like in the metro, like Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, like we're getting a lot more shows.
Yeah.
That's what's cool.
I would credit
And
a lot of local bookers for that too, though. A lot of local bookers and promoters are definitely like throwing a lot more shows, and I'm
yeah,
not saying that they're going to bring not saying that they are bringing other people down, but they do shows of like local bands and local showcases that are doing really well, and like it's pumping up the
gotcha.
scene in general. Like there's a lot of South Florida stuff. Jeff down there in South Florida, he's doing a lot. He does a
That
lot of
was
bookings
amazing.
and
Yeah.
does a lot of things. And then there's other sects too coming up, like the Miracle Collective here in North Florida just announced the Miracle Collective Festival and
Yeah.
stuff, so they're gonna have a lot of
Crazy
bands.
lineup.
Yeah, a lot of old school hardcore bands are coming through, and um, yeah, I think Florida's back on its way up. Not that we were in a lull for any reason, but I think a lot of bands are coming out of Florida now, like Domain, Body Snatcher. There are a lot of bands that are just making a lot of moves and making a lot of noise. So it's good to see.
Yeah. And what's cool about that is like we have like some more guys who book OG bands and like we'll bring them out of like uh 3 or 4 years or maybe way longer of like not playing a show,
Yeah,
like playing a night shift party weekend in Daytona. And that's with like Internal Bleeding, Pig Destroyer, Sick of It All, and like Strife.
yeah.
That's just a one-off. So those bands are starting to get booked like in Miami. Like Strife just got announced in
Today.
Gramps in
Yeah,
Miami because John McHale break even booking. Like he booked some great bands too. He's like bringing them down there. So that's like very exciting.
yeah. The party
You
shift,
never think.
the night shift party is going to be pretty fun. I think we're going to attend it this year. I don't think we could last year, or um, so I'd like to get down there this year because again, that's not that fucking far. It's like Daytona, which is
Yeah, Daytona's what, like an hour?
yeah, if that. I mean, it's a little longer on Rockville days because there's a lot more fucking traffic on the highway. But other than that, it doesn't take that long. So yeah, like Fixated, the EP coming out. How was that working with Chris and in the studio and stuff like that? Is it hard because they're touring like insane, like they got.
Yeah.
So I wonder how he juggles, both of those roles.
Um, it was a great experience. It was our first time ever as a band, like completely writing all together.
Mm,
Like five of us in a room, including, five and Chris in a room, just like throwing ideas. Chris is very like, you know, I was down to have him put his influence in the music because he was in King Conquer and we
mm-hmm.
love that shit. That was like one of the hardest bands ever. So I was like, yo, whatever you think would fit in these places, like let's try to work something like into it. So we would have like a lot of stuff happening in the songs, and then we would sit on it for like a week, gather again. We had to gather all together like twice, but in the time that we weren't together, we were all like working on it, like what could make the song perfect, what we think is perfect. And working with Chris was like very, I feel like I have more experience and I'm
Yeah.
better at tracking vocals now.
Oh, okay.
And
Well, he's
just the writing IQ in the room was like insane with him there.
yeah. I mean, he's been doing. Definitely been doing the production side for a number of years too. So
Yeah.
he at least on top of just his musical input, as far as like you said, he's in Body Snatcher, he's in King Conqueror, and he's got so much exposure in that realm. He also has the ability to kind of like let you know, hey, this might work for this reason because we're doing this in the studio. So that definitely helps out and goes a long way.
Yeah. He did, or we did one session or like a weekend of sessions of just writing, like getting stuff started. We had a few demos to like build off of, and we just like beefed it up and just like added ways to make it sound more violent and like also not too chaotic to where it was obvious that like six people were trying to put different ideas into one song. I don't know how it just worked. It just
Yeah,
worked.
yeah,
'Cause I'm very happy with how the EP came out, and I'm happy with Chris's production. We originally hit him up because we heard his production on a Bleed Abide
yep.
by Body Snatcher, and I was like, oh my God, this is insane.
And that did really well. That was a really well received album, not just by like their
Yeah,
fans, but by a lot of people, a lot of outlets, and again, that just kind of perpetuated their success, going through the roof. They just got back, I guess, from like a long European tour that had a lot of big festivals also in that itinerary. So they're
yeah,
getting
that
out
was,
there. They're getting out there. Um, but you said that you guys like got together a handful of times, two times or whatever, prior to heading in the studio, and you guys came with a couple demos. But you said you wrote in the studio. Of
yeah,
this, like you have 6 tracks on the EP. How
yeah.
much of that is like written or created working with Chris in the studio, and how much of that is like outside when you guys are working solo by yourself?
Mm. Yeah, I would say every song we went over with Chris, but maybe two of them or three were demos that we wrote before we brought it to him. And some parts didn't make the cut, and then some parts just got added. And I mean, yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think like, or go back and find the demo and then compare it to like how the song is now. Like, Deliberate Dehumanization was one of the first demos,
Mm.
and it's very, very, very different to like the demo.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. That's also probably because you guys showed it to somebody else and they gave you their input on top of that.
yeah.
So, um, do you guys all live in the same area, or do you guys live in different parts of Florida?
Well, we used to be like all based out of Broward County, and now it's just me and Brandon, our rhythm guitarist in Broward. And then our drummer, Ben, he lives in Lake Worth, which is probably like 40 minutes from Broward.
Mm-hmm.
It's still the same like metro area, but not really that close. And then our main guitarist, Randall, and Vendel live on the other coast, one in Sarasota, one in Tampa.
Okay.
We just played a show in Tampa like 2 days ago and all slept at Vendel's house.
You guys have a tour coming up, correct? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You guys are getting off on the road again, but we'll get back in. We'll get into that.
Finally,
We'll get
like
into that.
routing around us and not routing like around the headliner who lives in like Colorado, and it's like really hard to get to and from there. Like,
Yeah.
feels good.
If that's the case on certain tour packages or whatever, do you guys have to make the couple days trip sometimes in a van, or are you able to like fly out there, or how does that work for you all?
Never flying. I mean, that's like, unless it's Europe,
Uh,
probably we have our own van, so like we just like beat it up, like bring it out to the first show in like Phoenix, Arizona,
yeah.
which honestly, a band our size should be doing routing shows, which we do usually, but to start the last tour, we like didn't do any routing shows. And we just like spent 2.5 days in a van. It just made it to like a completely different climate and altitude, and it was like terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I starting that was like horrible. Like the long treks are, oh my God.
Yeah, no, it's brutal. I've done it before as well. I was once in a little shitty band. Not saying Tracheotomy is a shitty band, but I was once in a shitty little band. And yeah, we did the 8 hour, 9 hour plus fucking multi-state journeys because back in the MySpace days when you're just booking shows, you're just getting anything that you can as a little independent band, and sometimes those are states away from each other, and you just have to like suck it up and make the 10-hour journey. But it is
Yeah,
what
that
it is.
sounded horrible. Like touring in the MySpace days, one of the guys we just toured with, Malcolm, he's from Inverry.
Mm.
He's like the only OG member from that band, and they've been a thing since like '06. And he was telling me like stories about like touring back in the MySpace days. And it makes me like very grateful for now.
What was some of his down reasons the way he didn't like it?
Uh, he said it was just like MySpace promoters, like people on MySpace, and it's everything through email.
Yeah.
And then a lot of them were like dodgy. And then sometimes like they would pull up and the venue like doesn't exist,
Mm-hmm.
or like the show isn't booked or something like that. And
Yeah.
like I mean
That's
it just sounds crazy. I'm like showing my age for sure.
no, it's
Like
fine.
talking
It's
this no
totally
way.
fine. I'm showing my age the same way, the other way though. So
Yeah, that sounds like I mean at least gas was like way cheaper, but
we
like
had that going for us, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're getting a lot of money at the door, or if any money at
yeah,
all.
I mean
So
the guarantees were like way lower.
yeah,
So that's like
yeah, that's kind of funny. I mean, I do sometimes look back on that time thinking that it was a cool time because it was so DIY. But the downside of that being those things like the promoter may not even stay for the entire show and just dip out before, and that still goes on, but that seemed to happen a lot more back in the day, and social media wasn't as prevalent, so you couldn't really find someone as quickly, and you had to get to the
yeah.
next, you had to get to the next stop states away, like we just talked about. So you have to swallow a lot of bad things sometimes, but it was cool because you got to network. That was like the first kind of like networking that a lot of us did was just like going to people's top eights or top 16s and just trying to be like, who's this band? Who's this guy in what band? And you would
Yeah.
network that way. So it was kind of cool. But now it's social media is so easy or so, you know, available and everywhere. And you can get a hold of anyone almost at any
Yeah,
time.
we've had to
So
book a show last minute before, like in the middle of a state we're not from. Like, so I'm just like, oh man, the power of social media. That's nice.
yeah, there's some good things about it and some bad things about it
Yeah,
for
there's a lot of
sure. Yeah,
that.
for sure. Um, so let's talk about the band because again, you guys are relatively, I don't want to say new, but you guys are relatively young in the
Yeah.
space. So, how did you guys get together and like what was the, catalyst for you all to get, to make a band and
Mhm.
how'd you figure out like, hey, we want to be like a King Conqueror type esque band or we want to be this type band? Like, how did you guys come to make Tracheotomy?
Yeah. Okay. So, um, right before shows stopped happening in like 2020, I had just gone to my first few shows.
Mm,
I was like, yo, this is like really fun. And that's when like shows were like $5 and it was just no phones, just like mosh, jump, vibe, talk, talk to people. And then in 2020, uh, these guys who like I didn't meet from shows, they were like, yo, we need a front man for like our hardcore band. But it wasn't really like a hardcore band. It was more like modern, like knocked loose, sanction,
gotcha. Heavy
worked
hardcore,
away.
heavy metalcore, heavy hardcore.
Yeah, something like that. And we started that and it was fun because that's when I realized like I can do vocals and like it be kind of powerful and not hurt. So that's when I got to learn more. I dove deeper into like uh older bands or more underground bands. And I was like, holy shit, I can't wait till shows like start happening again.
Yeah.
And then that band lasted until like early 2021
Mm,
until I decided I want to do my own thing with like a deathcore band. It was originally supposed to be like a Scrams band that
mm,
I wanted to do. I guess I was like in the trend at that time that just I wanted to do that or like
Gotcha.
grindcore, scram, sasscore,
Yep.
something. And then I was like, you know what? Nah, like my vocals are too deathcore. Like, let's do something like 2006 Whitechapel when they wore like the big ass DC shoes and like the huge jorts and like basketball jerseys and
Yep.
played in like BFWs. Like that shit was awesome. Like with the clipping bass drops. And so we went, yeah. It was like tech deathcore at first.
Mm-hmm.
Tech old deathcore at first. And then we had a few member changes and like started taking it seriously because like our Twitter was doing pretty good. Like we were meeting a lot of people, and then this guy offered to press our EP, and we weren't even planning on making an EP. So that's when we wrote the simulation. And at that time, we probably had like 800 followers.
Yeah.
We wrote the simulation, and then I mean, from there, we became like more popular in the underground. And it was just like us trying to be funny on the internet and like entertain people. And then it got kind of serious like pretty fast. So that was exciting.
Well, I mean, all of this is happening pretty fast in general. Because like, if
Yeah.
you're saying that you kind of created the, well, let's back it up a little bit. What were the first shows that you kind of went to that kind of like sparked this whole thing right before obviously COVID hits and shows stopped going, early 2020? So like, you're just attending your first couple shows. What shows were they, if you remember?
From what I remember, there was a bar in Pompano Beach called Loser Lounge, and it was owned by like this guy, Wyatt, who was like really into punk. He was amazing. He passed away though, so like rest in peace. Uh, he was like just brought something that like South Florida needed and didn't have. And a lot of punk bands would play there for free or like $5.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like hardcore punk. And it was just like the adrenaline at these shows were like amazing. And I started to meet people and like get into the like music and structure of the music or in history of the music. And then I also remember it's way different, but I went to a Enterprise Earth and Lorna Shore show
Yeah.
in 2019, which was like way different. It was more like $25 at the door
Yeah.
and like
Is it the Hellfire? Like that's when Hellfire and all that stuff came out around that
no,
time?
it was like when they had CJ, like
Ah,
after
okay.
Tom,
Okay. Okay.
like that small little
Right.
timeline. And they played O'Malley's, which is like
Mm-hmm.
a dump fucking bar next door to like where I live. And back then it was good, but like now it's just a shithole. Like
Yeah. I've heard
to
about
a
it.
show
I've
there,
never been. Heard about it, but never
and I
been.
was like too young to like drink or stay past 11. But like I enjoyed the show. I forgot who else was on it, but like it was cool. And then the rest, I'd hate to break it to you, but I was just watching like Hate 5 6 online.
Don't
That's how
don't hate it.
that's how
That's the
I got
truth.
into it. I didn't hardcore in South Florida wasn't as huge as it was in late 2019 as it is now.
Of course.
You know, if I had that back then, it would be like it'd be crazy.
Yeah. It might not even be in tracheotomy. It might be something completely
Yeah,
different.
I could have been. Yeah, so like it wasn't really much unity in like a lot of people. It
Mm-hmm.
was just a blend of like a bunch of genres, and I mean that's how I got into it. And I watched a lot of Hate 5 6 and try to understand like the moshing and like the parts and the breakdowns and the two step. But like if I'm just behind my computer, I can't really get it.
Right. No, I get that.
As soon as shows started coming back, I went to like all of them,
Yeah. It's one of
and
those. Sorry. Go ahead.
that's when it was like Drake was already a band at the time, but I knew it wasn't like hardcore, so it wasn't the same thing. But that's how like I went to shows to understand it more, you
Mm-hmm.
know, gotta
It's
like show love to the scene and stuff.
it's just doing your homework, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, how did you even get into like heavy music? Had you? I mean, your dad's obviously going to Rockville and shit. So I
Yeah.
assume he's like playing some kind of like rock or some kind of rock influenced heavy music around you. But you know, like, how did you even? I mean, obviously the show's next to next to where you live, the Enterprise Earth Lorna Shore
Yeah.
stuff. But like, how did you even get into like heavier deathcore or heavier hardcore? Like, because going to punk shows, I mean, punk slash hardcore shows, obviously might get you into it. But you know, I would assume you're kind of like either still in high school, just left high school.
Yeah.
Did you have friends like showing you stuff outside of like your family influence, or how'd that work out?
Yeah. One of my buddies,
Like, how do you
Chris.
find Whitechapel, 2006 Whitechapel? Is that doing your homework
Oh,
later on, or is that fucking? Did someone show you that prior? You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, in 2020, there was just a trend of like scene kids on the internet. Like there was a whole remake of MySpace,
Yeah.
and like I had an account. It was called MySpace 93, and it was
Interesting.
literally just MySpace, but like like a new version of
I
it that
never
like
even
you.
heard of that. That's so. Let's. I'm so
Yeah, it
old. I
was
probably
like
haven't even
there
heard
was
about it.
maybe like 2,000 users,
Ah.
and it got shut down. But like I had an account, and then uh, the people I was hanging out with at the time were like they were already into like Suicide Silence and stuff, which was like at the time that was the biggest deathcore band of all time.
Mm-hmm.
So we would like just stumble upon old videos, and then we knew a few people who were like a part of it. There were a few MySpace deathcore bands in Broward, so like
Yeah.
they would tell stories and like show us footage of their old shows and shit. And that's kind of how we got into it. And then this band, they're still a band. I don't think they're deathcore anymore though, but the Queen Guillotine from Buffalo,
Mm.
they were the first ones to bring it back. They were the first ones to bring it back. Like they had like the gang vocals and like the shitty quality. And that's when it was just like, man, this is sick. Like deathcore like lost its uh groove and like style. Now it's just like a contest.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I don't want to. I knew before we hopped on, I was like, we can talk about COVID, but I'd rather not talk about COVID just because we're Floridians. But I
Yeah,
will say this about COVID: it definitely gave these smaller genres, especially like hardcore, deathcore, metalcore, a revival. Just because, especially like hardcore, a lot of kids would see a lot of kids would be on TikTok, Instagram, or whatever, and they would see these wild shows where people are like moshing and doing all this kind of crazy shit, jumping off stage,
yeah,
jumping on stage, and I think a lot of kids were like didn't know that stuff existed, and I back when I was a youngster, back in the early 2000s, late 90s, like there was no way to ingest any of that kind of stuff unless we're watching like a Hellfest DVD or Furnace Fest DVD or a Cornerstone DVD or something like that that was already, shot in pro style and all that stuff. And there wasn't really a
yeah.
lot of focus on like the moshing, so to speak. It was like more about band performance and stuff. But then you
Mm,
would go to these shows and you would see like, okay, they're moshing and there's a show and all that stuff, and you would do your homework like you were doing and everything. But with the internet or with the internet how it is in the last couple of years, and with COVID, people stuck in their house for 3 to 13 months out of that
hmm
time or whatever, depending on where you live. You
In
live.
Florida, it was like 2 months.
That's why I said 3 months, a year plus. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you were one of those unfortunate places that were locked down longer, you
Yeah.
spend a lot of time on your phone watching stuff, or like you did with Hate 56 and stuff like that. And that story probably is over a lot of people, because you would see these videos and then you would go Google it or YouTube it. And Hate 56 is one of the most predominant, documentarians of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, it really definitely injected a new blood, so to speak, into the audience, and that's why I think we're seeing like all these revivals of not revival. I don't want to say revivals, but like a lot of scenes and a lot of areas are getting more things in general going on, more shows going down, more bands are coming out. It's just a bigger audience altogether for a lot of these little genres.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, let's go back to the EP.
Right.
1126. How did you guys get linked up with 1126?
Uh, Tom sent us an email,
That's always the
and
easiest way.
all right. This I gotta dive deep into like
Go for it.
exactly what was happening at this time because it was like one of the craziest times of my life.
So it's
Uh,
day 3 of the band. No, I'm just joking. Go
Was
ahead.
you know how like you guys put us on for Mask of Sanity in like January 2023?
Yeah, that was like the first post that we ever got, or the
Yeah,
first post of yours.
first
Yeah, for
release.
you. Yeah, yeah.
First. So we dropped that. That song had a huge pop. I guess it was just like refreshing for a lot of people. And the music video we filmed at an abandoned office building that had like power because the building itself wasn't abandoned, but the room we shot in, it's like there was
Mm.
like nothing. It was just an office room, like nothing in it. And we did like a VHS style video, like performance only, no B-roll or anything. And production was like punchy and like sounded old. We wrote it like old deathcore bands, and Slam Worldwide loved it. I guess the deathcore community loved it, and then Tom and Scott saw it, and I guess thought it would be something they would be interested in. And then they sent us an email. We talked about it a little bit, and at the time, we were also getting signed to a talent agency.
Mm.
So we were having like an agent who was telling us like, hey, like if you guys want to take this seriously, I can book you on tours if you have availability. Like, and we were like, holy shit, this roster is crazy. Let's do it. And so we got Tom and Scott and 1126 at the same time as our talent agency. So that was cool. And during all this, our drummer at the time's getting like heavily canceled on Facebook. Holy shit. Like we just like did what a lot of bands don't even like get the chance to,
Yeah.
and how like we might have to stop this. So, and it was like horrible. It was horrible because he was like one of my best friends, but like at the time I was like, fuck man, we like are in the process of signing and shit. Like we got to do something about this. And we're getting like threats in our Facebook messages, and I was like, oh my God. But we handled that and got signed. We did a few releases and tours. So yeah,
Is was that Joe?
yeah.
So, but is Joe still in the group?
In the band?
Yeah, yeah.
No.
No? Okay. Well, we didn't report that Joe left, so I didn't, it didn't get to us at least. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta change that picture. Yeah.
yeah. No, so yeah, not that I want to bring up that particular instance, but because you guys dealt with, you know, uh, quote unquote cancel culture cancellation or whatever, was it like something that from your perspective, was that something that you guys just saw a lot of like in person or online mostly?
Uh, I feel like there's been like until 2024, there's been like a decrease in how much I see it online. But I guess like right after shows came back, it was like a lot.
Yeah, no, I
Like
know.
like pissed off people on the internet. I mean, rightfully so most of the time, but like
Well,
a lot of times it's just like, holy shit, what did this person do to like what?
yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I just am curious because like, is it because the internet can be very loud? You know what I
yeah,
mean? Twitter especially can be very loud, but how
yeah,
but how loud do you have to be for it to affect the real world? And how like that's what I'm
mm,
saying. Like a lot of people can bitch on Twitter. It's really easy to bitch about anything on the social media, but like, does it really matter in the real world? Like let's say Joe still is in the band. How much does that really affect and I don't know. It could have affected the trajectory of the band greatly. It could have not done that too. Who knows? I don't know. But
yeah,
in that cancel culture time, I think a lot of things were changed by just anonymous accounts on Twitter or Facebook or stuff like that.
yeah. And like being a part of a local scene full of like 18, 19 to like 22-year
Yeah, yeah.
olds
Younger
was
kids.
like full of like normie indie kids and like rave kids at the time. Like, 2022, early 2022, it was like a big blend. That's when it was like crazy. A lot of shit was happening. Um, I mean, it definitely slowed down. Um, But like, yeah, I mean, we never want to match any of our friends in that position, but unfortunately, it like happens to a lot of people. But
Yeah, that is
yeah,
unfortunate. That is very
yeah,
unfortunate because in the long run, it may not have even mattered, or it may not have been true, or it may have been true, and you might have done the wrong thing and kept somebody in. So you never know. It's so.
yeah. That I mean, that is, I think, more common than people think. But like,
Hmm.
so
You could have just done the Ronnie Radke thing and said, "Fuck it, I'm not doing anything the internet says."
yeah,
It's working for him, I should say. It works for him, but I don't know how many other people it might work for.
yeah.
uh,
I mean, we had to tell Tom and Scott at the time because since they work with the label, they needed our names on the contracts, and we were like, "Yo, we got to tell you guys something." And then Tom's response is like pretty funny. But then we said like, "Yo, like this is happening. It's pretty fucked up, and we don't know what to do." And every one of my friends who's like experienced in a touring band was like, "Yo, I know this is your friend. You just gotta kick him out."
yeah, that's a bummer. Did that affect your friendship in the long run, or do you guys
Of
still?
course, yeah, it
Yeah.
was horrible.
Do,
Yeah,
do you
I
guys
mean,
do you guys still communicate, or is that kind of like
I-
a no? That's a
no,
bummer. That's a bummer.
yeah.
I mean, it could be a bummer because he may have done something, or may have not.
Yeah, I
I
mean
don't even know
that
the
played with my
situation.
mind at the
Yeah.
time. That's why there was a lot of stuff happening because I was thinking like, damn, like was I really friends with someone who did it or like did they just like throw my friend's life away? But like I don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's tough. And I mean, I fully like to stand beside victims, when
Hmm.
it's like something serious and that sucks when it is like especially in a big band. It's just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. You're always looking, or you can always tell when something bad's happening because it's a notepad post on like Instagram or Twitter. Once you see the little notepad post from someone typing something out, screenshotted and then uploaded to Twitter, it's normally
or
not a
no,
good thing.
Facebook. I think Facebook's more fucked up.
Yeah, you really think that?
I think Facebook's like, if your shit's on Facebook, like you're done.
I
You're done.
guess, yeah, I guess. Because Twitter is kind of like you can be anonymous kind of on Twitter, whereas
Yeah.
on Facebook,
Twitter's like where you'll like, if you show your face again, you'll get your ass beat for sure. Like Twitter is like people remember.
yeah, so that would be
So
worse, I would think, because Facebook, there's so much is going on Facebook in these little
yeah,
worlds.
yeah. It's just fucked up all around.
It
It's just
definitely is.
horrible.
It definitely is. So you guys have done some like decent tours in your short time of being, a band. You guys linked up with Chamber, who replaced Tactosa on that Dying Phoenix tour. But that was like a Left to Suffer tour. You did the Enterprise Earth and Fury
Yeah.
tour, and do you guys have Oceano? Did you guys do the Oceano?
It was
Yeah,
supposed
Oceano
to be Oceano, but there was like an emergency where Oceano couldn't make it. So it was us,
Through the
Through the
Eyes.
Eyes of the Dead, and Warforged from Chicago.
Were you familiar with Through the Eyes of the Dead prior to the tour?
Barely.
Yeah, they were like
And
they
like,
were
I
like
guess,
my time. That was like my time.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I've always liked the more moshy deathcore than like the riffy and techie stuff. But I definitely gave them a listen before, and I didn't realize Nate Johnson was in that band. So I
Hmm.
was like, holy shit, like this guy's got a resume.
Yeah, they were one of
Uh,
those bands that I didn't like at the time when I first started like seeing them live because they would come. Were they from North Carolina or something like that?
yeah, a few of them, and then a few of them live in Chicago.
Yeah, I think back in the day when they were all like still living at mom's house or right after they left mom's house, they were all from North Carolina, but they would tour locally here basically a lot, and you'd
Yeah,
see them all the time. But I didn't really ever get into them till later on in life when I allowed myself to like more deathcore type stuff.
yeah,
But yeah, they were a couple of my first like hardcore metal shows too back in the day, or they would be at like some of the small festivals and whatnot that I would go to.
yeah. And getting that offer from Daniel DeFonce about Oceano was like mind blowing to me because that is my favorite deathcore band. Like Depths is like the most precious, fucking amazing deathcore record of all time. And I can hear a split second of that album and like be able to tell you what song it is. And like it's it was shocking to see that in our emails. And that was like our first ever tour offers. It's like, oh
Yeah, that's.
shit. Wow.
Did you guys do some touring prior to that, like solo tours? Like
Never.
no, so like your first fucking tour is the Oceana. Well,
Yeah,
it
we
wasn't
did
them, but Through the Eyes of the Dead tour.
yeah. There's this band From Joy from Houston
Yeah.
who are our friends, and their agent Pablo called me one time and was like, yo, uh, we need help booking in the Southeast. Like, if you got any contacts, let me know. At the time, I didn't really know many people, but I hooked him up with a show in South Florida through Jeff. And I was like, yo, if you're down, like, we can have Trey on both days. And he was like, yeah, like, we'll throw you guys on as direct support. So it was From Joy, Tracheotomy, Corpse Pile
Mm,
for 2 shows in Florida. I don't really count that as a tour because we slept at home both nights.
it's good. That's
So
that's
like,
bonus.
yeah, I mean, it was a like experience, like getting our feet wet, like playing outside of South Florida, and I mean, it's nothing compared to touring though.
Right. How was that
So
first tour? Just as a band,
uh,
like, because I don't know if you guys like, because some people don't like travel that much until they go on tour, and then they're like, it's a whole nother life that they never even knew about because you're seeing other states, you're seeing other people, you're seeing other places, and it kind of like, I don't know. Some people get culture shock, some people get homesick or whatever. So how was that first, run of shows outside of your home base?
it was June 20th to July 5th. So I wouldn't say it was like super long, but for a first tour, it was a decent length. And to get it started was a horrible experience. It was like a fucking nightmare because all of us were like under 25 at the time. So coming up with a vehicle was like impossible. And
Was dad
that
was dad
was,
helping co-sign for the rental?
he did,
Yeah. I would
which
assume
like,
dad is a big supporter just because he's going to Rockville and doing all this type of shit.
dude, it took me everything to ask him. Like I was at like such a low point to have to call and ask him, get him to stop what he was doing to come sign on this rental because it was the day of the show and like our like 4 rentals fell through.
Mm.
We were on our last one and the day of the show in Atlanta and we were still in fucking West Palm Beach, Florida. So like it was a nightmare. It was terrible. But like once we got on the road, I ripped the fucking weed cart and just fell asleep and forgot about it. Woke up in Atlanta and played the show and then uh as soon as we played the first show, I was like, okay, this is like not so bad. And then we played like the next two, and the other one was in Chicago with it was the only sold out show of the tour,
Mm.
I think. And it was in Chicago at Reggie's. It was like amazing. It was so packed, and like that was my first time in a green room and like getting a buyout and fucking feeling like, like I'm not from here and people were paying to come see me. Like it's a very good feeling.
Yeah.
So
It's a
damn, that was like,
very rare thing too. So you all should kind of hold that dear,
mhm.
because a lot of bands never even get to that point, and they do it for decades. So,
Yeah,
it is kind of like, I'm not saying lucky, and you could be. There's part of it is probably luck, and part of it's
yeah,
probably musicianship and who you know, and all this other shit too. So like a lot of
yeah,
things have to like fall into place. You have to get you have you
absolutely.
have to get your song posted on Lambgoat, and then you get attention from everybody else. I'm just joking.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean, we're
joking, but
blessed to like have started this in an area that like people love music. I mean, we could have been in like fucking Wyoming for all I know.
yeah, but people
As
do
soon
make it
as,
out of there now. The internet
yeah,
being the internet, you can make it out of there now. Um,
yeah. As soon as we did that Chicago show, it was all worth it.
yeah,
Everything was worth it. It wasn't even about money. We weren't making shit. And like we had to pay off a lot, like pay back a lot of stuff. It's just like didn't even care. We just wanted to like go get our name out. And like that's a feeling that like I cherish for sure because now we're more experienced. It's just like, a lot of us are moving around jobs and stuff, so the money that we make on tour is like very important. So like
Hmm.
we have shit to worry about. It's a bigger risk, but like nothing is like the first tour.
Yeah, you'll always remember the first one. Speaking of what you do outside of the band, and and doing this, that, or the other, do you what? I don't know if you want to speak for the other guys, but do you mind letting everyone know what kind of you do when you're not on tour, whether it's hobbies or do for work to survive, yada yada yada?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very passionate about like sports. My parents come from Brazil, so soccer is like in my
Yeah.
blood, naturally like have it, passion for it. So every now and then I'll like go to a game or like work at an event or something. And I like art and drawing out stuff. And I feel like one thing I wish I got better was I learned how to do lights and sound growing up in
Mm.
church. There was like a smaller service room for like the teenagers, and to do like community service, I had to do lights and sound for all the church events for the teenagers.
Interesting. So you weren't going to church; you had to like do it for
Yeah,
community
I was
service,
doing that. And then I didn't realize like that shit's like valuable nowadays. Like a sound guy, like I could be going on tour all the time.
right? And you
And I
still
just
could be. You still can.
eh. as soon as soon as my hours were up, I was like, yo, fuck this. I like don't ever want to touch any of this again.
So you were the judge made you go to church. Technically, you weren't going to church just out of your own.
Yeah, it was for like graduation, high school and stuff.
What do you mean?
Because one of the high school requirements is like 40 hours of community service.
Oh wow, we did not have to
Yeah.
do any kind of community service to graduate when I graduated. So
Yeah, I mean they gotta prepare us, our little minds to like work and
I
shit.
thought I thought maybe you got in trouble with the law or something like that, and then they just
Nah.
made you do it. Okay, yeah, we got caught. I got caught doing the senior prank, and we almost didn't get to graduate. We had to do a. I guess that was community service. I had to do. Had to do a bunch of shit at the school for like months.
Damn.
Stupid.
Oh,
But
it was
they
a
still talk about that
fun.
shit. So fuck them.
Yeah, it was like every Sunday for like a few months because the service was only like 2 hours.
Mm.
So
Was it what
eventually,
kind of
like,
church was it? Down south, it's got to be Catholic or something like that.
nah, I mean, you know how like this more south you are in Florida, it's like not really the South.
No, it's dude.
It's like a
I think we're the bottom of the South. Like Jacksonville is
yeah,
the
yeah,
bottom of
yeah,
the
yeah,
South.
exactly.
We're technically like South Georgia a little bit, but then once you get down, yeah, it's like cultures. It's a different culture altogether down there.
Well, I don't really know. I know it was like mixed of like different people from different countries.
Was it
There's like
Spanish? Was it like
translators
more
and stuff.
Spanish?
Because it was like a big Brazilian, Haitian, Dominican.
Definitely Catholic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, definitely Catholic. Because I already know I'm Catholic, so I already know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or I was
Um,
Catholic. I don't know what I am now. I grew up
yeah.
Catholic.
I mean, yeah, it was something like that. And
Long, boring services. That's all I remember.
yeah, I mean, when it's ran by Americans, they like to keep it short. That's
They
that's
got
one
shit
thing
to
I like.
do.
One thing I like, the Caribbeans and the Latinos, they like to be there all day. That's what they
Yeah,
love to
that's
do.
true. That is
Like
true.
I've been there, but like not at that church. It's
I
not the same.
actually I actually went to Haiti a number of years ago. Um, my mom passed away, and my grandfather like spent a bunch of money to like have a church built, a school built in her name down there. And either it was like for the 1 year anniversary of the school or something like that. But me and my uncle and my cousin went down there, and holy shit, they had this like whole production thing for like the school, and that took 3 hours. And we were staying at like a resort, like an all inclusive resort. And I the night before I had gotten a little too tipsy, and I was so hungover the next day. And it's outside in the middle of summer in Haiti, and there's no trees. They don't have any trees in Haiti, and I'm
Yo,
just like hung
nah,
over as shit, and I'm not. And they're just hours and hours and hours of like church and like dancing and church, and I'm like,
yeah,
okay, I'm throwing up on the side of the building. It's bad. It was bad.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the core memory for you,
Yeah,
and
I get positive or negative. It's definitely one.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's basically a rundown on like what I've done or what I currently do. I'm in the process of moving, um, so
Are you staying
I
in the
won't.
Broward area, or are you gonna move where like?
No, I'm moving out of state. I currently live like by the Inter Miami CF, which is where Messi plays,
Hmm.
and I'm about to be moving up to Nashville.
What's making you, or what's drawing you to Nashville?
Just like more opportunities for like music and uh,
Is
my
the
girlfriend got
band
a nice job. No, just me.
okay?
My girlfriend got a nice job at a talent agency up there, and we are going to be living pretty close to where the Nashville SC play.
Mm. So you're trading Messi for a smaller club? As a
Hopefully.
soccer fan, I think that you would probably want to be around Messi more often. But I don't know.
No, I kind of like hate living here.
Ah, okay,
Yeah, I
uh,
guess that also answers your question.
a
Kind
little
of
bit.
sucks.
I'm not a big fan of like the Miami area, but it's because it is. I actually don't like when like there's like 5 million people living in one little area. That's probably the biggest bummer. But it's also so hot down there. It's a different kind of hot than it is up here, and I hate that too. But I do love the art. I
I-
love the street art, and I love the art down there. It's crazy, and I do like to visit it. But I also love coming back up here. Um,
yeah.
so moving to Nashville, is there going to be like a little bit of honky tonk vibes coming into the upcoming tracheotomy stuff?
I don't,
You're
not
gonna
sure
do.
I understand the question.
You're gonna add in some country vibes to the deathcore. You're gonna do like a.
Oh, yo, just like the Southern metalcore, old Memphis May Fire and old Under Oath.
You could
Fuck
do.
yeah.
You could do all that. You could
This
make it a
shit's
little
good.
country vibes.
Shit's awesome. Or like a Tony Danza tap dance, the Electric Boogaloo, Danza 2.
Yeah.
That's like the funniest album ever.
You definitely have done your homework because these are all albums I would assume came out prior to you being either born or like able to speak.
No, I'm not that young, dude.
How old are
Come
you
on.
now? How old are you?
22.
Yeah, most of these albums may have been like when you were like a
I was at
toddler.
least 5 when that came out.
Well,
I would have
fucking
thought it was like terrible if I
yeah,
was 5 years old. But like, I
yeah, hilarious.
don't
Um,
know.
so what's for the what like you're moving, but does that how will that affect the band and like what is the goal for the band like at this particular point? Because obviously you've done a lot of things in a short period of time.
Yeah.
Um, did you? I'm trying to think. You haven't released a full length, so I would guess a full length is going to be the next goal, or do you guys just want to do singles and EPs and just kind of maintain like everyone's attention and throughout the year kind of thing?
Yeah, we definitely got to get a full length out at some point. But right now, I mean, I told you where everyone lives.
Yeah,
Like two of them are close by, and I barely see them anyways.
yeah,
And I'm like the vocalist, so like whenever they need to practice, I'm kind of useless. Like I mean, I, I don't really practice until they are tight, or
yeah.
else I'll just like using up my voice for no reason. So we've been doing a pretty good job at like gathering everyone we get offers like pretty far in advance. And I don't think it'll be a problem. Like a Spirit flight back home is gonna be like 27 to like $70, which is
Yeah, that's
fine.
true.
But and a lot of my family still lives down here, so like it's fine.
It definitely, yeah, being like Nashville to South Florida, you could definitely, those are big major hubs in general. So flights are definitely cheap. It's like going from Atlanta to Miami, it's like $40 and it takes an hour and a half or something like that, tops.
Yeah.
That's definitely a good situation. I'm trying to think when the night shift party is because I think that's going to be the next time we'll probably be in this
21st of September.
September. Yeah, yeah. And luckily, Furnace Fest is not the same weekend this time, so they backed Furnace Fest up a couple weeks into October. So we have a little bit of flexibility, and that's one of the things we want to do is check out the party weekend. That'll be a good time. But Simon, is there anything else you want to kind of? It's been an hour. This goes by quick when you're having fun.
Yeah.
Uh, so is there anything else you want to kind of leave off on? Shout anybody out or fuck Messi,
All
whatever
the
you want to
shout
say?
outs are all the shout outs are in our CD and vinyl booklet.
Old
So
school.
if you want to see your name in there, may or may not be in there, just buy one. I will also say I'm our van needs to go be picked up and paid for repairs in like 20 minutes. So I'm glad this is like almost, I mean, it was a pleasure talking to you,
No, no,
but I
I
was
get you.
stressing we're cutting it pretty close, but like, you know how it is, van shit. They suck.
Yeah, it is called the Vanflip for a reason.
Yeah,
Not only is it a shit show on this end, but vans in general are also a shit show to be.
yeah, they're terrible.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, shout out to you for having me. It's been great.
Well,
And I'm
we'll keep.
excited to see the
Go ahead.
I'm
Sorry, I didn't mean.
excited to see the new Tracheotomy profile picture on Lambgoat.
Yeah. Well, when you guys have had PR person, so just have them send over, or you can email it to me or whatever you want
Yeah,
to do, and we'll use that one going forward, so you don't have any canceled people in your profile or
for
your
sure.
images. But Simon,
Literally.
best of luck, brother. And again, just keep repping Florida, even though you're going to be moving to fucking Tennessee. But
Of
always
course,
Florida, always
I
Florida,
love growing
always.
up here.
Yeah.
It's been a great time. So
All right. Take
yeah,
care. Have fun dealing with the van stuff.
be in touch, man. Yeah, thank you.
Take it easy.